Now, I was talking to the Iranians this morning, and for many of them, I said, this will probably be your first Christmas in the UK. And I said, despite what you might observe in the supermarkets, and let's face it, after Halloween, I would imagine the shops will be full of all this clutter. It's not about Santa Claus, it's not about reindeers and Christmas trees and all that nonsense. Because Christmas, as many people know, is a Christian festival. It's a time that reminds us about Christ's birth, Jesus' birth. But today's subject is not about Jesus' birth. We're looking at the other end of that time scale. We're looking at Jesus' death. So that is the question we're asking. Why did Jesus die? Because you see, surely the Son of God could have prevented his own death. If you've read any parts of the Bible, you realise Jesus did some pretty amazing things. And one of those was he calmed the storm just using his voice. So I'm sure the arresting soldiers turning up in the dark in the Garden of Gethsemane would have been no problem at all to the Son of God. It would have been super easy, barely an inconvenience to him. So why did Jesus die? Or more importantly, why did Jesus allow himself to be put to death? You see, there's got to be something more significant at play. He wasn't just wrong-footed, he allowed himself to die. So there must be something amazing, and that should demand our attention. That is an important question to address. So I'm going to share with you a story that Jesus told, and it's in Luke chapter 18. So, I don't know, you've got the little Biblelettes on your table, those little Gospels of Luke, you can follow along with it, but I'm going to walk you through the story anyway. So it begins, 2 men. So we've got 2 men again. Now that's good. Whenever you did an English class, you always liked a good compare and contrast. So if you've got 2 people, even when you're watching a film, you want to do that, compare and contrast. 2 men. We had 2 men yesterday, didn't we? But they were on a cross next to Jesus. Today we've got 2 men. They're not on a cross. 2 men, they went up to the temple to pray. One was a Pharisee, the other a tax collector. Okay, so both these people are religious guys. They're churchgoers, if you like. They both believe in God. And they actually both believe that God listens to them. Otherwise, why would they be going up to the temple to pray? So verse 11. The Pharisee stood there by himself and prayed. Now, just in case you're not aware, a Pharisee is a seriously religious sort of person. Somebody that does things that he thinks God will like. So he might wear God Loves Me t-shirts. He might read his Bible a lot. I mean, the Jewish people, they wear their prayer shawls with all their tassels, extra long tassels so everyone can see them, extra long dreadies at the side. He wanted everyone to know he was a religious person. I guess sometimes you see people in church, not just with a small Bible. Mind you, people don't bring a Bible to church at all anymore anyway, but a nice big black Bible. That makes you look religious, doesn't it? Anyway, let's listen to his prayer a minute. He says, God, I thank you. Well, that starts well, doesn't it? That I'm not like other people. Robbers, evildoers, adulterers, or even like this tax collector. Okay, I think I can see what he's doing here. He's comparing himself with other people. And let's face it, he set the bar pretty low. You know, if you're a religious person, you know, and he said it right down there. He wasn't comparing himself to some other rabbi, was he? Now, okay, maybe some of us, well, I'm sure nobody in this room would ever say this, like, well, I might have bought a knocked-off TV, but at least I haven't murdered anybody. Or I may have driven at 50 miles an hour down the Beverley Road, but I'm no drink driver. Whew. No, that's the kind of thing he's doing, though. So this Pharisee adds, I fast twice a week and give 1/10 of all I get. Well done, you. God must be impressed. Well, anyway, let's see the other guy. We've looked at one, let's look at this other one. So verse 13 says, but the tax collector. Tax collector's not a well-respected job in its day, not particularly well-respected job today. Bit like a loan shark or a politician, if you like. He stood at a distance, so they're both sort of standing apart from one another and everybody else, it would seem. But probably standing at the back of the church, maybe the other side of that glass window, not really wanting to be part of the crowd where everyone could see him. It says here, he would not even look up to heaven, but he beat his breast and he said, God, have mercy on me, a sinner. Well, here we have a good example of chalk and cheese, of apples and oranges, Liverpool and Man United. You can take that as far as you want. Now, is the tax collector comparing himself to this other religious guy? Well, he might be. But given that he's not even lifting his eyes to heaven, he knows who he's really comparing himself to. He realizes he's comparing himself to the God of heaven, who he feels he can't even look at. Well, picture the situation like this. Let me talk about my school days, and I'm talking about when I'm back at primary school. Now, I'm not talking about wearing a fancy sailor suit. I was never as fashionable as Peter was. But I was given an assignment, we were all given an assignment to make a volcano. There you go, volcanoes. So, I'd get my cardboard, get my paper mache, start working it all, get my poster paints out, giving it all the right colours. I'd even made a little Roman villa and got my Airfix 1/72nd scale plastic Roman soldiers and put it on the base. Oh, it looked like it had come alive. It looked like Pompeii itself. And I used those Quality Street wrappers, you know, the ones you get at Christmas. Look, bringing Christmas back into it, with the different colours. If you put a green one and a red one over both eyes, everything appears in 3D. But I stuck those in the top of the volcano to look like the flames spewing out. Real cool. Now, my mate Kenneth Clayton compared to his paltry effort, which was nothing more than a cone of A4 paper that he'd coloured in badly with some crayons, and then he'd stuck a bit of cotton wool on the top and thought that would do. I mean, mine looked well impressive. I mean, Kenny's pile of rubbish. I mean, that didn't look good at all. And that was just all fine and dandy. I was feeling pretty pleased about myself. Until my mate Paul Murphy rolls in with his volcanologist's masterpiece. Wooden baseboard, modelling clay, creating the verdant hills of Pompeii itself. The Bay of Naples was made with that crimply, crumply blue paper. Just looked like the sea itself. And then he had a cassette recorder which he pressed, which made all of the rumbling sound. And obviously he knew a thing or two because he'd put baking soda in there, and then you can pour a bit of vinegar in and you can make it all froth up. I think one of the children up there's got one of those. It all froths everywhere. Kids love that sort of thing. Well, yeah. Now, my volcano didn't look very good at all. In fact, it was looking like it should go in the recycling bin with Kenny Clayton's bit of rubbish. You see, I might have looked good compared to Kenneth Clayton, but Paul Murphy, well, he just knocked my volcano out of the park and into the recycling bin. And in reality, that is where the Pharisee and the tax collector stood when you compare your goodness with other people's badness. You can feel good about yourself. You can look and say, well, compared to Dan, I'm doing pretty all right. I'm okay. But then, you know, compared to Liam, then I'm suddenly not feeling so great about myself anymore. Don't know how you're feeling about that, Dan. Yeah, I know. However, when you see your supposed goodness in comparison to God's perfect goodness, well, then you're left not feeling very happy about it anymore at all. You soon realise that actually you're quite sinful. You do bad stuff, and it's bad. And you see, God doesn't measure or mark our righteousness on a curve. Just because we're all bad at geography doesn't mean he's going to lower the pass mark. This exam, as we heard yesterday, it's pass or fail. And the pass mark is 100%. So if you're ever going to meet God's perfect demand, you're going to need to change tack. You're going to need to find something else to do, a different approach to make yourself acceptable to God. So we heard in yesterday's talk that Jesus lived the perfect life. His life was a sinless life. He was innocent. Nobody had anything on Jesus. One criminal on the cross understood and saw that. The other one didn't. And again today, we have two men in equally dire circumstances. The tax collector, well, he thinks he's doing all right. No, the tax collector doesn't think he's doing all right, but the Pharisee thinks he's doing okay. See, the religious guy thinks he's doing all right. His cardboard and his sweetie wrappers make him think he's on course for a good grade. But you know what? He's looking in the wrong direction. He's looking at other people's perceived failings and their faults, rather than looking at God's perfect demands. You see, Jesus lived the perfect life, and we do not. So how are we going to live that perfect life like Jesus? Well, that's where Jesus' death comes in. You see, by dying on the cross, he died the death we deserve for our sinfulness, for our God-rejecting rebellion. Now, we might think, well, why can't God just overlook all of this? I mean, hasn't he got a bit out of shape about this? But you see, God cannot ignore sin. We have broken faith. Our ancestors Adam and Eve broke faith, and we continue to break faith with him. Think of it like this. If my son Thomas borrowed my car and then went and wrapped it round a lamppost and smashed it, I love my son and I would want to forgive him. But I've still got a smashed up car. Somebody is going to have to pay to fix that car. Someone is going to have to pay to fix this broken world. And you don't have to walk very far to see it's a broken world. And that broken world is a result of your and my sin, our rebellion and wanting to not live God's way. Someone's got to fix that. So who is going to pay? Well, Jesus is going to pay our penalty. He takes that punishment. Jesus' death rescues us from eternal death because he died in our place. He becomes our substitute. He replaces us. It's like the great swap. Because you see, he doesn't only take our punishment, okay, he gives us his perfect life in exchange. And we heard some of this yesterday with Pete. Like taking our dirty, torn, ripped clothes and giving us a whole brand new wardrobe that will never go out of fashion and will never wear out. See, Jesus' death not only rescues us from something, which is hell, death, and punishment and judgment, and if you want to hear more about that, then come along on Thursday. It rescues us to something, eternal life. That's why Jesus died. That's why Jesus was born at Christmas. So what do we do? What do we need to do? What must we do? Well, in one sense, nothing. That is the whole point of the story that Jesus has just told. The tax collector did nothing except trusting God's mercy. He realized what a sinful person he was. It was only God's mercy that was going to rescue him. Jesus is everything and the only thing that will make us right with God. The person who is right with God is the one who trusts in God's mercy. Now, the question you need to ask yourselves is, well, what might prevent me from trusting in God's mercy? What might get in the way? Well, I think it's our pride. We don't want other people helping us out. We want to do it ourselves. We think we're doing okay. But trusting in your own goodness, well, that isn't going to work. 99% pass mark looks great. When I was at uni, I remember walking in to the common room with the other students, and my face was full, and I threw it down, and they went, my essay down, and they went, what's that, Rich? Did you fail? I went, I failed. They said, what did you get? And I went, a 2-1. And they went, a 2-1? And they, these guys were getting passes and thirds. And I went, I didn't get a first for my essay. That was not the pass. God only accepts 100%. You see, indeed, pride will come before a fall. You see, Jesus ends this story by saying, I tell you that this man, the tax collector, rather than the other, the Pharisee, went home justified before God. Justified means to be made right, to be declared not guilty. Can you imagine somebody as sinful as that being declared not guilty because Jesus had paid the price? But Jesus finishes by saying, for all those who exalt themselves will be humbled. Everybody that's walking around in their religious clothes, whatever they might look like, will one day be humbled because they're trying to do it themselves. They will get before God at Judgment Day, and he'll go, you might have 95%, but it's only 100%. Whereas those who humble themselves and walk in holding Jesus' hand will be exalted. They will be raised. And that will be a talk for tomorrow about the raising of Jesus. You see, exaltation is where we want to be. We want to be raised up. So we must humble ourselves to be raised up. Thank you.